Bullies crossed the line when they broke her dead mother's necklace. Big mistake. A story by Heartfelt Tales. The silver locket hit the concrete with a sickening crack that echoed through the empty hallway like a gunshot. 17-year-old Maya Chen watched in horror as the only piece of her mother she had left scattered into broken fragments at her feet, the delicate chain snapping like her heart just had. The cruel laughter of her tormentors rang in her ears, but all she could see was her mother's smiling face in the tiny photograph now lying torn on the cold floor. If this story moves you, please take a moment to like, share, comment, and subscribe to Heartfelt Tales. Your support helps us bring more inspiring stories to light. Now, let's continue with Maya's journey. Maya's hands trembled as she knelt down, desperately trying to gather the pieces of what had been her most precious possession. The necklace had been her mother's favorite, a simple silver locket containing a photo of them together for Maya's 10th birthday. Her mother had died of cancer 3 years ago, and that locket was the only thing that made Maya feel close to her anymore. It was the only thing that reminded her she was loved. Oops, sneered Jessica Martinez, the ringleader of the group that had been making Maya's life hell for the past 2 years. Looks like your dead mommy's jewelry isn't as special as you thought. The other girls giggled behind her, their phones already out, recording Maya's breakdown for their social media entertainment. Maya had always been different. Quiet, studious, and grieving, she didn't fit in with the popular crowd at Westfield High. After her mother's death, she'd withdrawn further into herself, finding solace only in her studies and the martial arts classes her mother had enrolled her in years before. Her father, consumed by his own grief and working double shifts to pay off medical bills, barely noticed his daughter's struggles. Maya felt invisible at home and tormented at school. The bullying had started small. Whispered comments about her second-hand clothes, accidental bumps in the hallway, exclusion from group projects. But it had escalated over the months. They'd stolen her homework, spread rumors about her family's financial struggles, and posted unflattering photos of her online. Maya had endured it all in silence, just as her mother had taught her to handle adversity with grace and dignity. But this was different. This was sacred. Jessica stepped closer, her designer heels clicking against the floor. What's wrong, Maya? Going to cry like you did when your mommy died? The cruelty in her voice was like a physical blow. Maybe if you weren't such a weird loser, she wouldn't have been so embarrassed to be your mother. Something deep inside Maya snapped. All the years of holding back, all the lessons about turning the other cheek, all the promises she'd made to her mother about being the bigger person, they crumbled in that moment. She stood up slowly, her black belt training automatically adjusting her stance. The other girls didn't notice, too busy laughing at their own cruelty. Take it back, Maya said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Jessica laughed harder. What did you say, freak? Speak up. I said take it back. Maya's voice was stronger now, carrying a warning that the bullies were too arrogant to heed. Or what? Jessica stepped forward, invading Maya's personal space. You'll tell the principal? Nobody cares about you, Maya. Nobody ever has. Even your own mother couldn't wait to leave you behind. The rage that had been building inside Maya for 3 years finally exploded. But instead of the wild, uncontrolled fury the bullies expected, what emerged was something far more dangerous, the focused, disciplined power of 7 years of martial arts training. Maya's first move was a simple redirect. When Jessica reached out to shove her, Maya stepped aside and used the girl's own momentum to send her stumbling into the lockers. The metallic crash echoed through the hallway as Jessica's head connected with the metal door. "She hit me," Jessica screamed, though Maya hadn't laid a finger on her. "She's crazy." The other three girls rushed Maya simultaneously, thinking they could overwhelm her with numbers. They had no idea what they were dealing with. Maya had trained for this moment her entire life, though she'd never imagined it would come like this. The second girl, Ashley, came at Maya with wild swings. Maya ducked low, swept Ashley's legs, and watched as the girl crashed to the ground hard enough to knock the wind out of her. The third girl, Brittany, tried to grab Maya's hair, a classic mistake that any martial artist learns to counter in their first week of training. Maya trapped the girl's wrist, twisted, and applied just enough pressure to send Brittany to her knees, crying out in pain. The fourth girl, Samantha, had the sense to back away, but Jessica was already back on her feet, her face red with rage and embarrassment. "You think you're tough now?" she snarled, pulling out her phone. "Wait until everyone sees what a psycho you really are." But Maya was beyond caring about consequences. For the first time in 3 years, she felt powerful. For the first time since her mother's death, she felt like she could protect what mattered to her. She looked down at the broken locket, then back at the girl who had destroyed it. "You had no right," Maya said, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside her. "That necklace was all I had left of her." Jessica's phone was recording now, and she was already crafting her victim narrative. "This girl is attacking us. She's totally lost it." But her voice cracked slightly as she noticed the way Maya was standing, the controlled balance, the ready stance that spoke of serious training. "Stop recording," Maya said quietly. "Delete those videos. And apologize." "Like hell," Jessica spat. "I'm going to ruin your life with this footage. Everyone's going to see what a freak you are." That was when Maya made her choice. She could walk away, let them keep their twisted version of events, let them continue to torment her. Or she could show them exactly what years of channeling her grief into disciplined training had created. Maya moved faster than any of them could follow. She closed the distance between herself and Jessica in a heartbeat, her hand striking out to knock the phone from the girl's grasp. The device skittered across the floor, its recording abruptly ended. Before Jessica could react, Maya had grabbed her by the shoulders and was looking directly into her eyes. "You broke something that can't be replaced," Maya said, her voice carrying a weight that made all four girls suddenly understand they were in serious trouble. "You mocked my mother's memory. You think there are no consequences for cruelty, but you're wrong." What happened next was later described by the security cameras as an extended physical altercation. What it actually was Maya giving four bullies a comprehensive lesson in why you don't mess with someone who has 7 years of martial arts training and nothing left to lose. Maya didn't seriously hurt them, her training had taught her control as much as technique. But she made sure they understood the difference between a victim and a survivor. Jessica ended up with a sprained wrist and a bruised ego. Ashley had a concussion from her fall. Brittany's wrist was strained from Maya's joint lock. Samantha escaped with only scrapes and the knowledge that she'd been lucky to back away when she did. The ambulance arrived 20 minutes later, called by a teacher who'd heard the commotion. The four girls were loaded onto stretchers, dramatically playing up their injuries for the paramedics and the gathering crowd of students. Maya stood alone in the hallway, looking down at the broken pieces of her mother's necklace, feeling empty despite her victory. Principal Johnson found her there an hour later, after the police had taken statements and the ambulances had left. He was a kind man who'd noticed Maya's struggles but hadn't known how to help her. "Maya, he said gently, "we need to talk." She looked up at him, her eyes dry but hollow. "I know I'm expelled. I know I'm in trouble. I couldn't let them keep doing it." Not to her memory. The principal knelt down and helped her gather the pieces of the broken necklace. "Tell me what happened, Maya. All of it. Not just today, but everything." So Maya told him. About the months of bullying, the harassment, the deliberate targeting of her grief and her family struggles. She told him about the social media posts, the stolen homework, the constant psychological torture that had made school a place of dread rather than learning. She told him about her mother, about the necklace, about how she tried so hard to honor her mother's memory by being strong and kind and taking the high road. "But they wouldn't stop," she finished quietly. "They just kept pushing and pushing until they found the one thing that would break me. And when they broke her necklace, they broke the last promise I made to her." Principal Johnson was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Maya, I'm not going to expel you. But I am going to transfer you to our sister school across town, where you can have a fresh start. And I'm going to make sure those girls face consequences for their behavior, not just today, but for everything they've put you through." Maya looked up at him in surprise. "But I hurt them. I sent them to the hospital." "You defended yourself against a group of students who had been systematically tormenting you for years," he corrected. "The security footage shows them destroying your property and surrounding you. What you did was self-defense, Maya. What they did was assault and harassment." The legal proceedings that followed were swift. The parents of the 4 girls initially threatened to sue, but when the school presented evidence of the sustained bullying campaign, including screenshots of social media posts, witness statements, and security footage, they quickly changed their tune. Jessica and her crew were suspended, ordered to pay for Maya's mother's necklace to be professionally repaired, and required to attend counseling sessions about bullying and its consequences. Maya transferred to Lincoln High School the following month. The story of what had happened at Westfield had preceded her, but rather than making her a pariah, it had made her something else entirely, a symbol of standing up for yourself when the system fails to protect you. On her first day at Lincoln, Maya was approached by a group of students who looked just as out of place as she felt. They were the quiet ones, the different ones, the ones who had been pushed around by bullies at their old schools or in their neighborhoods. "Is it true?" asked a small girl with thick glasses and a nervous smile. "Did you really stand up to them?" Maya looked around at these kids who reminded her so much of herself, grieving, struggling, trying to find their place in a world that seemed designed to knock them down. She thought about her mother, about the lessons she'd tried to teach about strength and kindness and protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. "Yes," she said simply. "And I'd do it again." But Maya's story didn't end with violence. It began with it. At Lincoln High, she started a martial arts club for students who had been bullied. She taught them not just how to fight, but how to carry themselves with confidence, how to set boundaries, and how to support each other. The club grew from 5 members to 50 in just one semester. Maya also began speaking at middle schools about bullying, sharing her story not as a cautionary tale, but as a reminder that everyone has the right to feel safe and respected. She talked about her mother, about grief, about the difference between being strong and being a victim. "My mother always told me that our pain has a purpose," she would tell the young audiences. "She said that if we can use our struggles to help others, then nothing we've been through is wasted." I didn't understand what she meant then, but I do now. The broken necklace was repaired, but Maya kept the original pieces in a small box on her dresser. They reminded her that some things, once broken, can never be exactly the same again. But they also reminded her that broken things can still be beautiful, still be meaningful, still be precious. 3 years later, Maya graduated as valedictorian of her class. In her speech, she talked about the power of standing up for what matters, about the importance of supporting each other, and about how our greatest struggles can become our greatest strengths. To everyone who has ever felt powerless, who has ever been told they don't matter, who has ever had something precious taken from them, she said, looking out at a crowd that included her father, her principal, and dozens of students whose lives she'd touched, remember that you are stronger than you know. You are more resilient than you think. And you are never, ever alone. After graduation, Maya received a scholarship to study psychology and social work. She wanted to help kids who were struggling the way she had struggled, to be the adult who noticed and cared and intervened before things got as bad as they had for her. But perhaps the most meaningful moment came on the last day of her senior year, when she was cleaning out her locker. She found a note that had been slipped through the vents, written in careful handwriting on pink paper. Dear Maya, it read, I was there that day when you stood up to those girls. I was too scared to help, but I watched you fight for something that mattered to you. You showed me that I don't have to be a victim forever. Because of you, I told my parents about the kids who were hurting me. Because of you, I joined the martial arts club. Because of you, I learned that I'm worth defending. Thank you for showing me what courage looks like. A friend. Maya folded the note carefully and placed it next to her mother's picture in the repaired locket. Some gifts, she realized, were even more precious than the ones we inherit. Some legacies were built not just on what we received, but on what we chose to give. Years later, when Maya had become a successful therapist working with teenagers, she would often think about that day in the hallway. Not with anger or regret, but with gratitude. Her mother had taught her to be kind, to be strong, to be compassionate. But sometimes, Maya learned, protecting those qualities requires a different kind of strength altogether. The girl who had been broken by bullies had become a woman who helped others heal. The daughter who had lost her mother had found a way to honor her memory by being the person she would have been proud of. And the student who had been pushed too far had learned that sometimes, the most important battles are the ones we fight not just for ourselves, but for everyone who comes after us. Maya's story reminds us that we all have the power to transform our pain into purpose, our struggles into strength. If this story inspired you, please take a moment to like, share, and comment below. What would you have done in Maya's situation? How have you found strength in your own difficult moments? Don't forget to subscribe to Heartfelt Tales for more stories that celebrate the resilience of the human spirit. Your support helps us share these important messages with others who need to hear them. Until next time, remember, you are stronger than you know, and your story matters, *.